Thank you. Well, like a cold sore on your lip after a period of enormous stress, Parliament returned last week and I, for one, was happy to see it back. Everyone was glad to be there, energised and refreshed, focused and enthusiastic, and at the end of the day, just happy to serve the country. The Prime Minister, at the time of going to air, Scott Morrison, acknowledged the... Oh, come on now, come on. Scott looks nothing like Ben Grimm from the Fantastic Four. Change that, please. Thank you very much. Anyway, the PM acknowledged last week's Nationals leadership challenge, but said...
They dealt with it quickly and we got back straight on the job as we never departed from in the government.
And, you know, and it's not easy to get straight back to doing whatever you never departed from doing, so well done. And thank goodness we sorted out all of our problems in Canberra before Jocko Widodo arrived, otherwise it would have been really embarrassing. Jocko, as you know, runs a country of 264 million people, and he does that with a smile. Scott, on the other hand, can barely manage 24 million with whatever that expression is. But the PM has sorted out the major problems, so credit where credit's due. Yes, the country's largely underwater, but at least the sports rorts are behind us. Former Rorts Minister, Bridget McKenzie, has been stripped of the deputy leadership... has been stripped of the leadership of the deputy leadership of the National Party, but, and I assume this is part of her punishment, will stay on as leader of the Nationals in the Senate. Yes, it's cruel, but I'm sure she'll think twice before she ever does what she's told by the Prime Minister's office again. Also behind us is all that unpleasantness with Barnaby Joyce
the Chattanooga choo-choo
trying to become leader of the Nationals again. Although, as Barnaby has pointed out, it wasn't about Barnaby
wanting my old job back.
Although that's what would have happened, so I really don't think he thought that one through. No, it was about Barnaby wanting the Nationals...
to be seen in its own voice.
And that's not easy. It's obviously not difficult for it to be heard in its own voice, even when Barnaby's doing the talking. But to be seen in its own voice requires a lot of lip reading. Anyway, that's done and dusted. Don't have to worry about Barnaby or leadership spills ever again. And the party can now get back to doing what it does best, making up the numbers so the Liberal Party can run things their way. Except deciding who the Deputy Speaker in the House of Reps is. I do have to say, though, that Barnaby has been noble in defeat. He's threatened to cross the floor and vote with Labor to block key government legislation. Not out of any vindictiveness, but because those who supported him in the leadership spill were not given cabinet positions after he lost. And that's not an unreasonable expectation. If I remember my history correctly, Fletcher Christian and those in the crew who set Bligh adrift in the lifeboat after they took over the Bounty were all rewarded for their insurrection by being promoted to the Admiralty. So going forward, we have a National Party riven with discord about whether their leader is pushing hard enough on things like building new coal-fired power plants, walking in lockstep with a Liberal Party riven with discord about whether they should even have things like coal-fired power plants. And it's these divisions which I think bind us together. Meanwhile, of course, Labor bumble along, everybody agreeing with each other because of groupthink and the hive mind, but there not being enough of them to actually be of any practical use. As far as the rorts are concerned, people are well and truly over this sort of thing from our government representatives. Or as Pauline Hanson's One Nation's Pauline Hanson put it...
Australian people are sick and tired of pork barrelling by politicians and looking after their own nest egg.
Pauline Hanson interpreter Jackson 5 looking after their own nest egg?
Feathering their own nest.
Oh, thank you. In fact, so sick and tired are the Australian people that there will be a Senate inquiry. Pauline Hanson again.
Well, if it's going to prove that they've used that money, taxpayers' dollars, to feather their own nest and further themselves, yes, I do.
This is the sort of transparency we need, isn't it, Jackson?
Exactly, Shaun. If the result of an inquiry can be guaranteed before we hold it, Pauline Hanson will support it. And, of course, by agreeing on the finding first, then it really gets rid of the need for such an expensive inquiry in the first place. Classic Pauline.
Thank you. Jackson 5 there, Pauline Hanson interpreter, and she'll be back with us a little later on to take us through Pauline's logic on why the 2032 Olympics will be too expensive for Brisbane.
It's a known fact that out of the Oxford University, they're saying 156% is a blowout. So it's a known fact, and 47% is over 100% blowout. They are facts.
hard to argue with that logic there, Shaun. The figures don't lie.
As I say, that's coming up later. Of course, the major impediment to the government getting on with the job of running the country was the sports rorts scandal. And now that that's been dealt with, the big issue facing the government this week was another one. And because it's happening so often, we thought it might be a good idea to spend some money on a new animated graphic and jingle for a regular report on sports rorts, or as I like to call it, Resportsprort. Now, this sports rort's a bit different from the other one, isn't it, Mags?
Yeah, that's right, Shaun. No suggestion of a breach of the application process, tenders or guidelines on this one.
And why is that, Mags?
Well, there was no application process, tenders or guidelines. If you were in a marginal seat, you got one, whether you wanted it or not.
Now, Mags, of the $150 million available for what was catchily titled the Female Facilities and Water Safety Stream, $120 million was spent on swimming pools, and it's probably worth pointing out that that's enough $1 coins to half fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Or in this case, buy 14 of them, even though the money was originally slated for girls' changing rooms. So why swimming pools instead?
Yeah, well, Shaun, I guess since girls' change rooms was the justification everyone in the government was using for the first sports rort, they had to make it something else for the second one, or people would have started to think something was up.
Yes. Well, thanks very much, Max. Right now, though, a question left over from Monday night's Q&A. Yes, up the back there. Yes, hello.
Yes. This business about getting Indigenous communities to help us with their fire practices...
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes, well, isn't asking Indigenous Australians to help us manage these disasters a bit like stealing someone's car and then asking them to help you push start it?
Yes, well, I'll take that as a typical ABC bleeding heart, black armband leftist comment. I'm joined now, though, by Freedom of Information request shredder in the Home Affairs Department, Brian Pegmatite. Brian, Peter Dutton's loyalty has certainly been on show of late, publicly backing Senator Mackenzie during her recent difficulties and privately backing, I'm assuming, Scott Morrison during his. It must have been very hard for Mr Dutton to see all that flack Mr Morrison was copping earlier this year.
Oh, it was hard for Peter to watch Scott stumbling around, embarrassing the government in a way Peter would never do.
Yeah, because of his affection and his allegiance to the Prime Minister.
Yes.
I mean, you don't like to see a colleague struggle, do you?
No. And let's not forget how much he really did struggle.
Yes, well, at least that's all over.
The holiday.
Yes, yes.
The lack of urgency.
Yeah, what else?
The handshake business.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, well, that's all in the past now, though, isn't it?
That's right. I've drawn a line under it.
To emphasise it?
To indicate it's finished and we can move on.
Ah.
I have, however, provided your producers with an edited tape of all of Mr Morrison's gaffes, should you wish to run them in the future.
Well, thanks for your time, Brian.
Pleasure. I would like to experience some pleasure.
And after the break, will pill testing at music festivals encourage more people to take drugs in the same way that roadside barriers have encouraged us to drive at full speed towards a cliff? That answer coming up soon. Well, have you ever taken any drugs?
Really?
This enormous glacier on the Antarctic shelf is pristine and unspoiled. Climate change scientists, keen to measure how fast it's melting, travel by icebreakers, snowmobile, heavy vehicles and plane and smash up the ice to collect it in a big bag so they can boil it using these machines and then use the hot water to bore holes in it.
That's no wonder the fucking thing is disappearing, you idiots. Coming soon.
Well, not back in the Canberra bubble a day, and the PM has rearranged his cabinet. Now, by contrast, when my mother rearranges her cabinet, it takes her at least a couple of weeks. Mind you, her dolls aren't as creepy as Scott's. So she doesn't mind taking her time. So what are the major changes? Well, David Littleproud loses water, much like those downriver from the Murray-Darling Basin. Keith Pitt gains water, but there are tablets you can take for that. Also, he gains Northern Australia from, I think, Gina Reinhardt. The big losers in the reshuffle, though, are the people of Tocumwal, who, having thrown an effigy of David Littleproud into the river last year, will now have to go to the trouble of making an effigy of Keith. And you know, that's going to be hard because he really doesn't have any distinguishing features. Just get a bag of wheat with a pair of glasses on it and write Keith Pitt on it. That would be my advice. The PM, though, is a big fan, calling Keith a fantastic pick. I assume that's not a typo. And dubbing him Pitt the Performer. Pitt the Performer, yeah, I can see that catching on. Just like when Scott called the Minister for Cities, Alan Tudge, the Congestion Buster. And Tasmanian Treasurer Peter Gutwine, a fucking mendicat. Everybody's calling them that now. Anyway, the PM said Keith was going to bring real intellectual horsepower to his roles. Mind you, if you're going to compliment someone's intellect, I'm not sure you should refer to a horse. I'm sure when Keith's holding a press conference and someone asks him how many million litres of water are going to be redirected for use by Adani, he won't be stomping out the number on the ground with his foot. The other major move we should also mention, I suppose, is Josh Manawatu, the staff who allegedly obtained that document for Angus Taylor that the AFP aren't investigating anymore. Seen here with the PM, and a document which may or may not be doctored. So hard to tell these days, isn't it? Particularly when the police are too busy raiding the ABC and Annika Smethurst's drawers to do their job properly. Anyway, Josh has, for reasons which are in no way related, been made director of the Canberra Liberals and given a life membership of the ACT Young Liberals. So congratulations, Josh. Although, is it possible the life membership is another doctored document? I mean, how can you be a young Liberal for life? Presumably there's some age limit or it starts getting inappropriate. AFP Acting Senior Sergeant Max Payne.
No, I'm not on yet. I'm doing the next bit about cannabis in the ACT.
Oh, okay, right. Excuse me. Yes, the ACT recently became the first Australian jurisdiction to legalise the personal use and cultivation of cannabis. Hang on, I haven't finished. I haven't finished. Sorry, sit down. Sit down, all of you. Sit down and watch this.
But police would still be able to charge someone with cannabis possession under federal law. OK. Now, Acting Senior Sergeant, apparently under the new laws, each person is allowed to grow 2 cannabis plants. However,
the supply of seeds, possessing seeds, that all remains illegal.
Yeah, which does pose a bit of an existential problem because the legal growing of a cannabis plant is dependent on the illegal possession of a cannabis seed.
Well, it means, Shaun, the cannabis plant is very much like a reformed citizen. It's all above board now, but it was criminal when it was younger. It's the Mark Wahlberg of the plant kingdom.
I noticed from your caption, because I was reading it while you were talking, I kind of drifted off, that you're an acting senior sergeant. Why acting?
Well, I always enjoyed pantomimes and dressing up as a boy, so...
Do you still enjoy dressing up as a boy?
Very much so, Shaun. I believe it's a healthy release, and I suppose that's where the acting bit started. And, you know, I've been lucky enough to make a career out of it, so...
And are you acting now?
Good Lord, no. I wouldn't call anything anybody does on this daily show knock-off acting.
So how does a law-abiding ACT citizen grow a cannabis plant, which they're allowed to do, without having a seed which they're not allowed to have?
Well, that's the beauty of the legislation, Shaun. It's illegal to grow your legal cannabis plant. Like the child of an asylum seeker born here, they're illegal from birth.
At what point, though, does the seed stop being a seed and become a plant? Does it depend on how high it is? The plant, not the grower.
Well, I'm a Christian man, Shaun, so I believe that once germination occurs, it's a plant.
And the plants must be grown in a backyard. Hydroponics are not allowed. Why is that?
Well, I believe the official government line is because that shit will really fuck you up.
Well, Max Payne, thank you very much and good luck with the acting.
Thank you very much.
Overacting Senior Sergeant Max Payne there, telling us that if we smoke weed in Canberra, we won't be charged. Is it retroactive? Because I owe my dealer a lot of money.
I'm done, Shaun. I'm over.
Right. Oh, can I just ask one more question, though, about the AFP abandoning their investigation into the Angus Taylor matter? Just one...
All right, I'll just have to get back into character. Yes?
Well, apparently they abandoned it because there was no evidence the minister was involved in falsifying information in the false document.
Well, Shaun, the police often do that. If they have evidence of a murder, for example, like a dead body, and they clear a suspect in the case, they'll almost always abandon the investigation rather than try to find out who actually did it.
Thank you very much indeed, Max. Well, right now, though, here's the Bureau... Don't applaud him. Right now, here's the Bureau of Meteorology's Niall Haynes with the latest forecast. Niall, any meteors expected for tomorrow?
No.
Thanks, Niall. Well, along with why on earth the Labor Party would allow Richard Marles to go on Insiders last Sunday, another thing we still don't know is what deal the government struck with Jackie Lambie to get the Medivac bill repealed. Pinterest and Instagram curator for Ms Lambie, Prosecco Mule, is in the audience. Now, Pris...
What?
Are you now able to tell us what pound of flesh Jackie managed to extract from the government for her vote?
No, I'm bloody not. And I'll tell you something else for bloody nothing. There's not much flesh weighing about a pound you'd want to see extracted from those bastards in that bloody parliament.
Could you give us a clue?
I don't have a clue.
Did she get something nice? Was it dinner with Erica Betts?
No, it was neither of those things.
Well, was it...
Oh, don't bloody push me, mate, I'm telling you, because you won't bloody know what bloody hit you.
Not allowed to know much, are we?
Bloody...
Of course, the effect of the repeal is that the powers of refusal for medical transfers of offshore detainees has now been fully restored to Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton. Oh, come on, that's very unfair. Could we change that, please? It's much better. Now, one of the reasons given for the repeal was that detainees were self-harming in order to get to the mainland, as Pauline Hanson explained.
We know that these people have imposed self-inflicted, like, palm oil into their bloody penises.
I'm not exactly sure what she's talking about there, Shaun.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, the scale of the meltdown of polar ice caused by climate change is matched only by the meltdown within the coalition caused by climate change. Human shield for the Energy Minister, Orville Feeling. Should the proposed coal-fired power station in central Queensland go ahead, and should it be subsidised by the government?
Well, that's up to the market to determine, Shaun.
Yes, but what's the government's position?
That's up to the market too, Shaun.
And what's the market telling you?
That the government shouldn't be spending taxpayer funds on building new coal-fired power plants. We need to seriously think about committing to a net zero emissions target by 2050.
Well, thank you for that direct answer. Would you like to do the Queensland version now?
Yes, please.
OK. The new coal-fired power plant proposed for central Queensland, what's the government's position on this?
We're back in coal big time. Get in here!
All right, thanks, Orville. Thank you very much. Now, I'm joined now by a spokesperson for Labor's Shadow Energy Minister, Humid Pouch. And, Humid, this division in the coalition over coal must be a gift to Labor politically.
Well, yeah. You know, Labor's position on coal-fired power plants is that under no circumstances would we rule them out at all. We think coal-fired power plants will always have a warming effect on our planet, and so the days of coal-fired power are well and truly here to stay. Labor has heard what the voters of Queensland told us at the election, and we can't listen to them loudly enough.
Thank you very much indeed, Humid. And we have a question from the audience left over from Monday's Q&A. Lady up the back there.
Yeah, so the PM used tax dollars to buy an expensive sous vide machine for his McMansion, right? My question is, does he really need a slowly warming water bath to cook his meat gently, or do we already have the Great Barrier Reef?
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you very much indeed. Right now, though, here's Lydia Rowlands with the latest in our cultural cringe.
That's exactly right, Shaun. It's always exciting when a big-time world leader comes to visit Australia that we can embarrassingly fawn over. Last year it was Mike Pence and the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea. And I'm not actually sure who this is, but judging from the dual lecterns, he's a pretty big deal. So anyway, this year it's the Indonesian President, Joko Widodo. Not only did Scott put on a state dinner for him, but he also invited Joko to address Parliament. And like how your own family stops yelling at each other when the neighbours are over for dinner, it was nice to have a reason to pretend we all get along in our country. Plus, of course, there was the Indonesia-Australia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or IAKIPA, as in, I keep a good eye on you after how you screwed East Timor in that gas deal that time. It's a good deal for us too, as it's supposed to reduce or eliminate restrictions on 99% of Australian goods into Indonesia, which is a nice change because in the past they've really cracked down on some of our exports. The other good thing is they're going to offer duty-free access to 575,000 cattle, which will be great for any cattle hoping to pick up discount electronics or bulk cigarettes. Shaun.
Thank you, Lydia. Well, still to come later in the week.
Sunday night on Vera.
Kenny, love, you're an idiot.
Mom, we're ready to charge Tommy Nolan. He's downstairs, still denying it. You want to speak with him before we go ahead?
No, I'm done talking, love. Charge him.
Mom.
Hang on, Aidan, wait a minute. We've been looking in the wrong place. Tommy Nolan didn't fire that shotgun. He couldn't have. He hasn't got any arms or legs.
Then who?
Alison Croft. She's got arms and legs. Aidan, love, come with me. Kenny, you're a useless git.
Mom.
Wait. Alison Croft couldn't have done it. She were in Cuba then. Dead. We've been looking in the wrong place. We're looking for someone with arms and legs who were in the vicinity of the murder at the time and were alive.
Bok Nitro Obelisk.
Bok Nitro Obelisk! Aidan, love, come with me. Hang on, love, just a minute. There's no such person as Bok Nitro Obelisk. Kenny, you're a dickhead.
What about Portman, the murder victim? He was in the vicinity of the murder at the time and had arms and legs.
Portman? We were looking in the wrong place. Aidan, love, come with me. Kenny, you're an arsehole.
Mom.
Hang on. Portman couldn't have murdered himself. He's still alive. There hasn't been a murder. We've been looking in the wrong place. Kenny, everyone hates you.
Homespun crime solving with a little bit of bullying. Vera, Sunday, 8:40.
At the end of the day, when my perkiness has evaporated, the last thing I need is to spend hours in the kitchen. I want something I can rustle up easily from the contents of my fridge. Oh, dear God, not again.
Nigella's post-Brexit kitchen. Coming soon.
Welcome back. Well, last year wasn't the best Angus Taylor has ever had. Undeclared business interests, his brother's grasslands, liking his own tweets, misrepresenting our CO2 emissions at the Madrid Climate Summit, Naomi Wolf. But this year has started off well, with the AFP deciding to drop their investigation into the allegedly doctored document he allegedly used to allegedly attack the alleged Lord Mayor of Sydney. But what's he really like? Francis Greenslade spoke to one man who knew him well.
Thanks, Shaun. I'm here with Bertrand Russell, who died 50 years ago and never went to Oxford. Lord Russell, who was the Angus Taylor that you knew so intimately?
Though primarily ensconced here in my digs at Trinity College, Cambridge, some 60 years before Angus Taylor was born, I would sometimes venture across the quad and bicycle the 82 miles to visit with him. Angus, I recall vividly uttering to him on one occasion, "Does Naomi Wolf live a couple of doors down the corridor? And did she ever talk to you about Christmas trees?" "No," he replied, and smiled as one would were he the devil himself. "Angus," I asked again, "did Naomi Wolf live a couple of doors down the corridor? And does she ever talk about Christmas trees?" "No," he again replied, leaving me in something of an ontological cleft palate. "Angus," I asked a third time, hopeful that some glimmer of truth might be forthcoming as a reward for my persistence, "was Naomi Wolf a name that you thought you'd drop into your maiden speech? Because otherwise your feeble and probably fabricated story about fighting for the right to save Christmas trees would sound like the sanctimonious Christian virtue signalling it undoubtedly was." "Yes," he replied, "and we have been friends ever since."
Back to you, Shaun.
What, me?
Oh, shush.
Fantastic performance. Well, not coming up because black comedy is on in a minute.
New smart door allows for keyless entry. And George Columbaris to sell Toorak mansion worth $5 million. Suggestion is bidders agree that figure, but only pay him $2.
Yes. And a final word on the National Party, if I may. Now, the Nats have obviously studied the instability, infighting and leadership squabbles that were so electorally successful for the Liberal Party in the last election and have decided, I'm going to have me some of that. Barnaby may not have won the leadership ballot. The numbers aren't made public, so we'll never really know for sure. But he did redefine the role of his party.
The Prime Minister talks about the quiet Australians. Our job is to represent the near invisible Australians.
Invisible Australians is a narrow demographic, I'd have thought. But anyway, that would mean that the Nats represent the invisible, the Libs the inaudible, One Nation the incomprehensible, and Labor the inconsolable. I think that's everybody. Goodbye.
Giant baby.